Lord, I come before you today with a heart that feels hollow despite being surrounded by family. A contradiction that makes the loneliness even more painful to bear. The home that once echoed with little footsteps and constant, "Mommy, look at this," now feels increasingly silent as my children grow taller, their eyes meeting mine less often, their worlds expanding beyond the boundaries of my embrace. I remember the days when their small hands sought mine instinctively, when I was their whole world, their safe harbor, their everything. Now they're building lives that require less of me each passing day. And while I know this is the natural order of things, the sacred progression you designed, my heart aches with a void that grows alongside their independence. Lord, you who counts every hair on our heads, surely you see these invisible tears that fall inward where no one else can witness them. The smiles I maintain while packing lunches for children who no longer share their daily struggles with me, the cheerful goodbye waves as they rush toward friends and activities that don't include me, the dinner table conversations that grow shorter as their private thoughts grow deeper. I am drowning in the presence of others, a peculiar loneliness that feels almost shameful to acknowledge. Your word reminds me that even Jesus sought solitude yet felt the human need for companionship in the garden when he asked his disciples to stay awake with him during his darkest hour. This contradiction of human experience, needing both connection and separation, feels especially sharp in motherhood as I navigate this middle passage where I'm still needed but differently, less urgently, less completely. Sometimes I wonder if they can see the flicker of hurt in my eyes when they decline family time in favor of friends, or when conversations that once flowed freely now require careful extraction. Have I become just another adult in their lives rather than the essential life force I once was? The one who knew every preference, every fear, every joy? I find myself longing to be loved again with that pure, uncomplicated devotion of younger years, to feel central rather than peripheral to their expanding universe. For those watching, there's a special ebook in our pinned comment called Don't Think, Trust and Surrender that can help ease anxiety symptoms. Remember, this complements but doesn't replace professional guidance. Lord, I recognize the selfishness in these feelings even as I confess them to you. You designed children to grow, to spread their wings, to establish their own identities separate from mine. The successful launch of independent beings is the very measure of parenting well done. Yet knowing this truth intellectually does little to soothe the emotional reality of becoming less essential day by day. When I read about Hannah who surrendered Samuel to temple service while he was still so young, I marvel at her strength while wondering if she too wept silently on her journey home, arms empty of the child she had so desperately prayed for. Did she question her purpose once her role as his daily mother transformed into something more distant? When Mary watched Jesus leave home to begin his ministry, surely she felt both pride and piercing loss as the child who had depended on her for everything now moved according to his Father's greater purpose. These biblical mothers walked this path before me, this gradual surrender that feels so much like loss even when wrapped in the rightness of divine design. I struggle with the contradiction of wanting my children to soar while secretly wishing they would still need me as their primary wind beneath their wings. The house grows quieter as activities move behind closed bedroom doors, as conversations happen through text messages with friends I've never met, as inside jokes develop in social circles that don't include me. I prepare meals for bodies that are often rushing elsewhere, maintain spaces for children who spend increasing time away, hold space in my heart for detailed updates that have become brief summaries. Fine. Good. Nothing much. Words that create distance rather than connection, that leave me knowing less about those I love most with each passing day. Lord, even as I pray these words, I feel guilty for my longing. Am I failing to appreciate the blessing of healthy children who are doing exactly what they should? Am I too selfish in my desire to remain central in lives that must, by your design, expand beyond me? The empty nest looms on the horizon not as a distant theoretical concept but as an approaching reality that both terrifies and beckons me. Who am I when I am no longer actively mothering? What identity awaits me when daily caretaking ends? These questions haunt my quieter moments as I watch childhood photos on my phone, digital memories of those who still live under my roof but inhabit increasingly separate emotional spaces. Sometimes I find myself creating small problems just to be needed, manufacturing moments of connection through dependency, and then feeling ashamed of such manipulations. I long instead for authentic connection that honors their growth while still including me in meaningful ways. The loneliness feels particularly acute during milestones and achievements when I realize how many formative experiences now happen beyond my witness. The first crushes confided to friends instead of me, the challenges navigated with peer support rather than maternal guidance, the triumphs celebrated in social media posts before being shared at home. I scroll through their online lives sometimes, feeling like an outsider looking in at relationships and experiences that I once would have heard about first. This digital distance adds another layer to the physical and emotional space that grows between us. Lord, I know intellectually that good parenting means working myself out of a job, that my success is measured by their increasing independence. Yet my heart struggles to reconcile this truth with the deepening sense of loneliness that accompanies successful launching. When Mary pondered things in her heart as Jesus grew, did she too feel this bittersweet mixture of pride and loss? Did she treasure the moments of connection all the more because they grew less frequent? I seek her wisdom now as I navigate this middle space of motherhood, learning to love without possessing, to support without controlling, to remain available without imposing. The loneliness of mothering older children feels particularly isolating because it exists alongside constant activity and responsibility. I still cook and clean and drive and schedule, yet the emotional intimacy that once accompanied these tasks has shifted dramatically. The physical proximity without emotional closeness creates a cognitive dissonance that exhausts my spirit some days. I perform the same actions but receive different responses, maintain the same spaces but experience different connections within them. Lord, you who designed family as our first experience of community, help me navigate this changing landscape without bitterness or manipulation. When I read how Jesus honored his mother even from the cross, ensuring her care and connection through John, I'm reminded that relationships evolve but needn't end. Help me find new ways to connect that honor my children's autonomy while nurturing bonds that can mature rather than diminish. Perhaps the loneliness I feel is partly your invitation to deeper relationship with you in this season. A divine beckoning to spaces in my heart that were once filled completely with maternal identity. As my children need less of my everyday physical and emotional energy, perhaps you are calling me to redirect that capacity toward purposes I've backburnered during intense child-raising years. Yet even as I consider this possibility, I long for practical wisdom on nurturing meaningful connection with these emerging adults who still live under my roof but increasingly live in worlds beyond my reach. The loneliness feels particularly sharp during holidays and traditions that once centered around childlike wonder and participation. As teenage eye rolls replace excited bouncing, as obligatory presence replaces enthusiastic engagement, I mourn not just for changing family dynamics but for my changing role within them. The mother who once orchestrated magic now negotiates minimal participation. The woman who once represented home itself now occupies increasingly peripheral space in lives focused elsewhere. Sometimes the loneliness manifests as jealousy toward those who still command my children's enthusiastic attention. Teachers they admire, friends they prioritize, even screens that captivate them more readily than family conversation. I catch myself competing for attention in ways that embarrass me later, desperately seeking evidence that I still matter uniquely rather than merely functionally in their expanding worlds. Lord, I confess these feelings of jealousy and insecurity, asking for your wisdom to love more generously, to celebrate the many influences that enrich my children's lives rather than resenting them as threats to my significance. When I read about how John the Baptist declared, "He must increase, but I must decrease," I wonder if that pattern applies to parenthood as well. If my role necessarily diminishes as their independence grows, and if there can be grace and purpose in that diminishment rather than only loss. The practical loneliness of everyday life with distancing children manifests in so many small moments. Cooking meals for people who eat at different times, creating family opportunities that compete with increasingly complex social schedules, maintaining traditions that feel increasingly obligatory to those I most want to include. The emotional labor of motherhood remains intense while the emotional rewards grow less immediate, less consistent, less visible. The photos on my phone show smiling faces at family gatherings, but don't capture the negotiations required to create those moments or the swift departures that often follow the camera click. Lord, I read that you collect our tears in your bottle, that you record each one in your book. Surely then you've noticed these tears shed in car lines after drop-offs, in empty bedrooms while collecting laundry, in quiet moments when the contrast between past closeness and present distance feels particularly acute. These aren't tears of depression or despair but of transition, of love that must transform rather than diminish, of identity reshaping itself around changing family dynamics. I think of empty nesters who tell me to treasure these days, who warn me how quickly they'll end, and I want to explain that I'm already experiencing profound emptiness even with full bedrooms, that the emotional departure begins long before the physical one, that I'm already grieving even as I celebrate their healthy development. This anticipatory grief creates a complicated loneliness, mourning what is already changing while still being fully responsible for maintaining family systems that feel increasingly one-sided in their emotional investment. Lord, when Jesus told his disciples that he would not leave them as orphans, he acknowledged their fear of abandonment even as he promised a different kind of presence after his physical departure. I wonder if this offers wisdom for my journey too. Learning to trust that relationships can evolve without ending, that love can express itself differently across changing life seasons, that presence doesn't require the same forms it once did to remain meaningful. The practical reality of feeding growing bodies while feeling increasingly disconnected from their inner lives creates a cognitive dissonance that fuels my loneliness. I still know their favorite foods but no longer their deepest fears. I still wash their clothes but no longer know all their friendships. I still provide their home but am increasingly uncertain about their dreams. This partial knowing feels more painful sometimes than complete separation might be. This living alongside without living within, this proximity without the intimacy it once guaranteed. As my children grow more private, more independent, more socially connected beyond our home, I struggle to discern the difference between appropriate separation and unhealthy disconnection. When is their withdrawal a normal developmental step? And when might it indicate problems requiring intervention? Without the intimacy of previous years, these determinations become increasingly difficult, adding another layer of anxiety to my experience of their growing distance. Lord, give me wisdom to respect their privacy while remaining attuned to their well-being, to honor their autonomy while fulfilling my ongoing protective role. The loneliness of mothers with growing children exists in a cultural blind spot, acknowledged neither as the intense hands-on challenge of early parenting nor as the complete transition of empty nesting. We occupy a liminal space of partial emptying, of incremental letting go, of anticipatory grief alongside ongoing daily responsibility. Our loneliness gets dismissed with platitudes about enjoying our increased freedom or appreciating their healthy independence, responses that invalidate the genuine loss embedded within these necessary transitions. Lord, you who see the unseen and value what others overlook, I bring this hidden heartache to you, this grief within joy, this loss within success. When I read about Jesus weeping at Lazarus's tomb, even knowing resurrection was moments away, I'm reminded that emotional truth can coexist with bigger picture understanding. My sadness at growing distance doesn't negate my gratitude for healthy development. My loneliness doesn't contradict my pride in their increasing self-sufficiency. These seemingly contradictory realities coexist in my mothering heart just as they coexist in your divine nature. The God who is both transcendent beyond our comprehension and immanent within our everyday experience. As I move through this season of increasing separation, help me find new ways of meaningful connection that honor their growth rather than hindering it. Show me how to remain emotionally available without being emotionally demanding, how to create family moments that feel like opportunities rather than obligations, how to communicate love in languages that resonate with their changing needs and preferences. The loneliness I feel watching other aspects of their lives take priority over family isn't just about my diminishing role but about my fear for what they might lose in the rush toward independence. The grounding of family identity, the wisdom of intergenerational relationships, the stability of consistent love amid life's uncertainties. I worry sometimes that in their hurry to establish separate identities, they might miss the unique gifts that family connection offers across changing life seasons. Lord, if you brought me this prayer today, I want to thank you for seeing my hidden struggle, for validating this complicated emotional terrain of mothering older children. If others are watching who recognize their own experience in these words, may they feel less alone in their loneliness, more understood in their complicated grief, more supported in this bittersweet journey of letting go. If you connected with this message, Please leave a like and share it with another mother whose children are growing distant. Together we can support each other through this precious, painful, sacred transition toward a different kind of loving. Lord, help us learn to be loved differently rather than less as our children grow, to discover new dimensions of relationship that honor their maturity while maintaining meaningful connection. May we find communities of understanding among other mothers walking the same path, and may we trust that you who began the good work of family within us will be faithful to complete it, even as its expression evolves across changing seasons of life. Amen.